Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for yet another episode. We're so excited that you are here with us today. And we are fresh off of our Go Sherm Lunch and Learn. And so, even with today's episode, that is actually continuing to build upon that momentum that we started in that session itself. So, today's topic is going to be based on performance management and addressing biases. And I cannot wait for you guys to just hear the wealth of knowledge that we have from our special guest speaker today that is joining us. And I want to also thank everybody for your support, not only at the Lunch and Learn, but those who also reached out to me that wanted to be there but could not be there. I just want to just say thank you for your encouragement, kind words, all the support given. It has been a wonderful experience. And thank you again to Go Sherm for having me for that experience to be able to share my knowledge with all of you. So without further ado, I am, of course, being joined by my fabulous co-host, Dr. Nadia Soulouque.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about this topic. Not only was the Lunch and Learn on this topic so informative, it's something that leaders struggle with still, and there's so many changes, new strategies that can be implemented, and so many different generations in the workforce that require different types of feedback. And so this is going to be so important so that we can have a workforce where everyone feels that they are contributing and they understand what their expectations are in the workplace. I'm really excited.
Exactly. And like I've already alluded to, we have an incredible speaker joining us today. She is a doctor, she's a mom, she's a wife, she is a business owner, she is a dear friend of mine that I have had the pleasure of knowing for several years now. And I even consider myself to be better just from not only knowing her, but also being able to glean from her knowledge and experience. She, and who I'm speaking of, is Dr. Mia Young. She had a class a few years ago of teaching a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners how to create and even finesse their business plans. And I was one of those recipients. So I'm better because of her. And I'm just so excited for everybody, for you to be able to meet her and just to hear just this wealth of knowledge that she's bringing to the table. Nadia, as you know, I can go on and on, but just so you guys can get an even clearer picture of who I'm talking about, I'm going to go ahead and read her bio. Dr. Mia Young, she knew at age 10 that living in poverty was not going to be the continued story that surrounded her life as she watched her mother raise 4 children alone without any support from her father. Mia was determined to rewrite her life page by page, and she did just that. Mia was raised in a small rural town, Quincy, Florida, just outside of Tallahassee, that's the state's capital. Although she is the youngest of 4 children, she is a first-generation college graduate who received her bachelor's degree in English education just 2 years after graduating high school. Yes, Mia graduated high school in 1996 and graduated from Florida State University in 1998 after being a dual enrolled student in high school. She became a language arts teacher and remained in education for 20 years, serving in various roles such as a teacher, curriculum developer, literacy coach, principal, and a professional development coach working for companies such as Apple and Achieve 3000. She also received a doctorate in educational leadership and administration in 2012 from Florida State University. Education is Mia's passion, and after marrying her husband, Dr. Wisner Young, who is a clinical pharmacist and giving birth to their only child, Malia, Mia took great risk and left the comforts of working in corporate education to build a preschool that focused on high quality education for children 6 weeks to age 5. Bright Scholars Early Learning Academy is not a daycare, but a preschool that promotes academic excellence and fosters an early awareness of God's unconditional love. Today, their preschool serves more than 225 children each year. They are currently expanding their brand to a second location that will open in August 2024, next month, guys. Mia did not stop there. Her entrepreneurial spirit, being well alive, brought her into the world of medicine. And in 2021, Mia and her husband joined a pediatric urgent care franchise in Oviedo, Florida. Mia saw this opportunity to continue serving children and families by providing trusted quality care. She sold the business a year later as she realized education is her first love. And as a result, she focused her attention to helping other women realize their entrepreneurial dreams by creating Self-Made Women's Circle, an organization supporting aspiring female entrepreneurs and turning their business ideals to reality. Self-Made Women's Circle is bringing women together to guide them through the process of developing and launching a successful business. When asked what's next, Mia says the story is still being written, but one thing is for certain, she lives her life as an entrepreneur and will continue working to inspire and empower women to go after their dreams. Mia resides in Greater Orlando with her husband and daughter, and she enjoys spending time with family, fishing, and developing business. Is this woman not bad, y'all? I'd like to welcome Dr. Mia Young.
Wow. Thank you so much, Laketta. Wow. I'm like, who is that person she's talking about? Thank you both for having me. I'm excited to be here, really excited about the topic, and just glad you guys chose me to have this fun conversation with you. So thank you.
Of course. You know, when this topic came about, and as you know, Nadia and I were talking, I kept telling her, like, your name kept coming to mind. And so I know that this is going to be just an incredible conversation today because we are in the presence of a phenomenal woman. So thank you again for joining us today, Mia.
Yes,
Thank you. My absolute pleasure. Thank you both.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we jump into this topic of thinking about performance management and then also going deeper when it comes to addressing biases that can arise, Mia, I'd like to kind of just start off with, tell us a little bit about, in terms of your business, your school, have you ever had performance reviews that you've done for your staff members? How did it start, or kind of how are things going now?
Yes. It's funny, as you were reading the bio, hopefully people heard the portion of I was in education, right? I was a teacher. I've done everything in education in terms of being the employee, not the employer. So stepping into business and then realizing, oh, I'm the employer. So I now have to do these performance reviews, but that was something I was not trained on. I understood it and felt it as an employee. And every year my principal would come in and observe me as a teacher, and that would determine, okay, if I'm meeting all of the metrics. But now what does that look like as an employer, having to do that with a staff of over 30 employees? And let me tell you, it wasn't pretty.
I can imagine.
Now 8 years later, things look good, and it's still not perfect, but it's definitely a work in progress. So to answer your question, yes, I now, have experience with it. It's a growing process, and it's something I don't think you're ever done with, right? So if we're in year 8, I would say by year 3 is when we got an official, we had a nice document that we use, and then we learned over time we need to add to, we need to take away. And even now, as we get ready, August is always our new school year. Even though we're preschool, we kind of align ourselves with the public school calendar, so August to May. So now we're looking at, okay, what changes do we need to make to our current performance evaluation system so that we can make sure that it's aligned with our values, our core values. It's aligned with metrics that we need today that maybe we didn't need 5 years ago. And I can talk about that more, but it's definitely a ever, evolving process. It's never, oh, we've gotten it created, now we're done. Yeah. Because if you do that, then that's when those biases creep in.
Agreed. And I love how you said that it's a process. And I think sometimes that's what a lot of people forget. Like, it's never just a one and done type of thing. We are continuing to evolve in different ways, especially in business. And as our businesses grow, things change, especially when we look at our staff members and just like the type of workload and tasks and responsibilities they may have. And so it's good to always make sure that we are looking at our, performance management systems and tweaking where it's needed, and then also continuing to learn as we go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you already also kind of dived a little bit into my first question of, your experience with implementing performance reviews. But can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the initial challenges you faced and how did you overcome those challenges to establish an effective performance management system?
Great question. I think one of the biggest challenges for any small business owner, right? If this is your first time out the gate, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. Like I knew I wanted a preschool. So for me, that meant I needed students and teachers and a cook, right? Because I needed to feed them and I needed curriculum. Those were the things that were important on my, to-do list. As long as I have these things, I can function. Now, the beauty is I came with the experience of having been a principal. So I knew that I would need to evaluate my teachers some way to determine, are they having great interactions with the children? What's the classroom management looking like? Safety, those kinds of things. But I'll be honest, that first year, that wasn't my priority in terms of documenting it. So the first 2 years, my teachers just got raises because they stayed. You stay.
Which happens a lot in small businesses.
And that's what happens. And it's like now, 8 years later, I'm like, oh my gosh, but I don't beat myself up about it. I'm like, I knew it was something that was needed, but I also knew in my industry, in the childcare industry, it's a revolving door with teachers.
Yes.
And I saw that a lot in my first year because, of course, lots of growing pains. And I guess there is a blessing and a curse, more of a blessing, but we opened with 115 children. So we didn't have a moment to kind of figure it out. It was like, they're here. Let's go.
We're in this now.
Yes. And so it was kind of like focusing on most important things. So those who stayed, good job. I love you. Here's your raise. And everybody got the same thing across the board.
Wow. Okay.
But then I saw what issues that created, because now people don't know.
Right.
They're really good. And then when you want to go in and make comments and give feedback,
especially constructive feedback.
Wait, but I got a raise. You did. And I gave it to you because, baby, you stood in here with me. But now as we go into year 2, same thing happened because now our school was completely maxed out. Like we filled out so fast because of the area we were located. Here I am thinking that we would be able to get to the performance evaluations and get some other, pillars put into place. And no, same thing. Kind of like Oprah, you get a car, you get a car, you get a raise, you get a raise, you get a raise.
I know everybody was happy with that.
Exactly. And you hit it right on the head. They were happy and content with it. But how does anybody grow in a system like that?
So true. So true.
Nobody grows, right?
Your high performers get discouraged because they are getting the same amount as someone that's a low performer.
Yep.
Dr. Nadia, bingo. The high performers are like, well, and they know, they see the classrooms down the hall. The teacher has called out how many times, and I've shown up every single day.
Yeah.
And teachers request me to be, parents, they request me to be their teacher because I'm that good. But everybody gets the same. Like I said, what motivation is there for that high achiever and for the low performer?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gone, and there's no need or even motivation to do better or even want to grow. And then even what happens at times is they end up going to another school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then maybe they'll go to another school where it's a larger entity, because I came into a space where I competed with what I call the big boys. I compete with all of the large franchise schools, the well-known, the Primroses, the Learning Experiences, the Kiddie Academies. And then here's Bright Scholars, a one-off, and we're crushing it. But if they leave my school and go to one of those entities, they're going to have a totally different experience, because these schools, they have 400 to 500 plus schools. They have a system.
Yeah.
They know what it's going to look like. So now I've set them up for failure in a sense, because someone's walking into their room, they're getting observed, they're having 30, 60, 90-day, coaching, which is what we do now. And now they're doing performance evals. That was not happening at Bright Scholars. It was always in the back of my mind, though. But it was not happening. But that's what it looked like the first 2 years. And it's a challenge for small business owners out the gate.
Yes.
Because it's like finding a tool that exists. And then if you found something, it was so expensive and I'm a small entity, I'm like, I can't use that. I can't purchase that. That doesn't fit. So we really had to create something on our own.
Yeah. One thing that I tell, just a lot of business owner as, I'm an HR consultant is you've got to find what's going to work best for you and your business and tailor it that way. And when you
and that's exactly what we did.
Right. And it's working now, as you can see.
It's working. Absolutely.
But I love that you gave yourself grace for those first couple of years, when you weren't able to have it as a priority as you would have liked to have had it, but you were able to, strengthen it and also be able to perfect it as time went on.
Absolutely. Yep. And it was not easy extending grace because something about entrepreneurs, we want to conquer the world.
Oh, yes.
We want to do it all. And it really forces you to find your weaknesses, and to look at your strengths, but where can I be better? And I knew if I wanted my school to grow and if I wanted us to continue to excel and to have a great name in our community, I needed to give my staff what they deserve. A lot of people just see the performance evaluation as, oh, it's almost like a routine, right? Like, okay, at the end of the year, you're going to get this performance evaluation because this is what people do. And a lot of people tie it to their, raises. But it's so much more than that. And I now better understand it as an employer than I did as an employee. And now I'm hoping I'm getting my employees to see the importance because I didn't value it as much when I was, I was like, hey, I'm a teacher. And I was.
Right.
But we can all grow, right?
Exactly. There's always room to grow and just we're all evolving. So
exactly. You are absolutely right.
So I'm going to pause here because we'll edit this out. But did you ask your follow-up question, Laketta? Or
yeah, it was. Okay. I tied it into it.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in here with a question. So when you're going through, Dr. Young, through this process, how have you identified and addressed biases in your performance management practices?
That's a really good question. And hopefully I can make this make sense. One of the things that I did, so my husband and I, we sat down, right? I was like, okay, I have to put something in place. And so I kind of started researching online to just see what was out there. And like you mentioned, Laketta, being able to pull from this piece and pull from that, article, and just starting to pull things together to create what we considered our employee performance appraisal. But Dr. Nadia, one of the issues with what we had, again, it's an end of year performance evaluation, right? What happens in the middle? And so when I did these end of year performance evaluations, what would often happen, I was evaluating them on probably my most recent interaction or the one point in time based off what my mind could recollect off of all the other things, because the first 3 years I served as the director. So I was owner and operator. So I'm wearing every single hat that you can think of. And now doing performance evaluations, I have this tool, but now when I do it, I'm really just taking probably the last moment in time, the last interaction, the last thing that I can recall. And that's when I said, this isn't working. This isn't fair, because how is it looking at the employee in totality, right? I wasn't doing that. And I realized that. And you know how I realized it? The teacher called me out on it.
Oh, wow.
Sat down. Yeah. And you know what? And she did it and I've created an environment where I always tell my staff, yes, I'm the owner, but I'm in this thing with you. And we really are family there. So I have this open door. The Mia you guys see now, this is how I am. You know me, Laketta.
Yes.
This is how I am all day long until I get to the car and I'm like, oh, it's over. So she felt comfortable enough to say, well, Dr. Young, I don't think this is fair. It was a component of it, because it's so, I'm looking at it now, it's so many different areas, it has like general work habits, like how are you as an employee? Like, do you show up on time and those kinds of things, interactions with children, classroom management. And of course, it was an interaction with children, something that had occurred, and it wasn't the best, like it wasn't anything, gross or anything, but that's what I remembered. And so when I got to that section, what did I do? I gave her on the lower end because that's what I could remember. But now, remember I said we go on a school year from August to May. So her question is, you mean to tell me from August to May? I think, what about when I did this? What about when I did that? What about, and honey, I have forgotten all that stuff. I was focused on that one moment in time. And that helped me to realize that was my own bias, because I didn't look at her in which I honestly thought this evaluation would allow me to get a full summation, but it didn't. It's only as good as I could remember. So I had to I figured out I had to fix that part.
But definitely there, I would say that what recency bias, right? Because you took an experience that happened recently, but then also the horn effect, where you do something that negative, and that's what you focused on.
Now break that down, Dr. Nadia, the horn effect. I'm on this entrepreneurial side now. So I know, yes, recency. So what's the horn effect?
Yes.
The horn effect is like looking at or taking an example or scenario that was negative, and that is your focus on the evaluation. On the flip side, the halo effect is taking something that someone did very well in that moment and only focusing on that, and perhaps not focusing on all the negative behaviors that happened in the months previously. So yeah.
Got it. Thank you for that. Yep. Ditto that. Yes.
And what did you do? What strategy did you put in place to, make sure that this doesn't occur moving forward?
Yes, I thought back to when I was in the classroom and what our principals did. They started doing classroom walkthroughs. So those were your informal observations. I mean, you still wrote them down, you still documented, but those you would use as means for coaching. So if I went into the classroom, so I put a rule in place, which now I'm no longer the active director. 8 years later, I'm out of the school completely. But before I left, I tested it to make sure it would work. So directors are now required to do 2 formal classroom walkthroughs. So that's where they're going to go in. They have a full checklist of things. So there is identifying, there are indicators that they're looking for: classroom management, teacher-child interaction, the atmosphere, the environment, those type of things, so that if you should ever forget those formal observations, live in the employee's file. So when you are now sitting down to do the end of year, you can go back and reference those things. So once we conduct a formal classroom walkthrough, we are required to pull the employee in and to review it, to talk about it, and to develop a coaching plan if need be, to get feedback, and then to find out from the staff member is if there's something they need from us. What can we do to, help them meet whatever metrics are identified? So that was one thing. And then, so those are the formal classroom walkthroughs. Then we have what we call a 5-minute walkthrough that they are, my directors, they're required to hit every class once a week for 5 minutes. And those are just 5 key things we're looking at. And so those they don't have to talk with the teacher about unless they saw something that was, like, okay, we need to fix this. But then if we use those to give kudos throughout the year. And so we have this little ticket, if you will, that will say kudos. And so we'll just jot it down quickly, put it in their employee file, so that when we do this evaluation at the end of the year, we have other moments that we can look at. Now, the same way you have those kudos.
It's a flip side of that.
Yes, opportunities for improvement, and those only get written if they're just really something that we're like, this could become a problem. Like we're governed by the state of Florida Department of Children and Families. So always say, we're going to inspect ourselves before DCF comes in to do the inspection. We're going to already know what our issues are. So that's those opportunities for improvement, or as they, and I don't call them write-ups. Like a write-up is totally different from our opportunities of improvement. Those are just little conversations or coaching, and those go in the file too. So now we can pull all of that together along with doing the final evaluation to help us inform. And another thing I did that I tried this year, it's time consuming, so I don't know. I mean, it's good. The evaluation, I let them rank themselves first.
Yes.
I like that.
It's time consuming. I know I should continue it because let me tell you, they ranked themselves harder than I did. I was like, no, you gave yourself a 2. No, I have such and such over here. And they were honest. They would say, oh, well, it's because I did this and I did that. And it just really opened up for lots of dialogue. Now, I only did that with my new hires, not my seasoned people who've been with me for a long time. Where they get to self-rank themselves, I tried that out with the new people because it's consuming. So time is another challenge.
Yeah, that's definitely what hinders a lot of employers, especially smaller businesses. Just it's an extra time component, and so you have to really look at your priorities as to, okay, well, can I, do this at this point, or should we wait until another time so we can focus on this task or this, priority of ours, business wise. But I love your approach, Dr. Young, just in the system that you put in place. It sounds like it is very effective and it's going to render a lot of great results or continue to render great results.
Yes. And we've seen it. It definitely works. I just promoted my assistant director to the director role. And I told her, I said, hey, in the next 2 weeks, I want you to call every teacher in one by one and do a 5-minute chat. Ask 3 questions. What's working for you? What's not working? What would you like from me as your director? And she said, they were like, I'm so glad you did this. And then she said, well, I told them, well, I didn't come up with it. Dr. Young told me. I was like, girl, don't do that. Let them think it's from you. I did that on purpose because she's younger, right? She's 24. Teachers there who are 60. And I'm like, I know what needed to happen. I'm like, don't give the goods away. But something as simple as that, just some check, right? Because it's so important to get feedback and conversations from them as well.
Definitely agree.
I know when I am training my leaders and trying to avoid that recency bias is that I just tell them, have a folder with the employee's name, and whenever something comes across an email, just, put it in there. And then when it comes time to do the evaluation, go back a year and that's a good refresher on the successes or maybe some areas of opportunity that happened over the years. And then now, we've recently implemented in my organization a formal performance evaluation program, which allows employees to be able to insert their successes in the program, and then managers as well. So when it comes time to do the evaluation, all that information is there as well. So that's helpful. So if you're an organization that doesn't have the capacity to have a formal program, good old email and maybe a Word document tracking the successes and opportunities is just as good as using a program. So
I am so glad you mentioned that, Dr. Nadia. I literally wrote that down. I'm like, gosh, that's exactly what we used to be able to do when I was a teacher. We had our own portfolios that we created, and we were able to submit that to our principal because we get it. We were in public schools and she had over 100+ teachers under her. There's no way she was going to be able to keep up with that. So thank you for bringing that to light, because that's something I can do, with my directors to take some of the load off them. Let teachers submit.
Correct.
That's really good. So thank you for sharing that.
And I will put that in and say too, that helps for a more richer and effective dialogue between manager and the employee, because you're both coming to the table with something to talk about versus it just kind of being one-sided and it's just the manager sharing feedback, whether it's positive or constructive. The employee has something that they can come to the table and talk about as well. Like, hey, these are some accomplishments that, I really, am proud of that I got to achieve this past year. Here's some things that I'd like to work on based on feedback that I've received throughout the year. It's a much more effective type of conversation, and you both leave with something.
Absolutely. And especially the way we're set up, our parents get to come into the school and go to the classrooms.
Mhm.
So a lot of times they speak directly to the teacher about how good they are. And, you've done this and you've done that. And very seldom do they stop to say, oh, Dr. Young, by the way, this teacher,
Yeah.
so when teachers when they get those emails, like you said, they now get to say, hey, by the way, and sometimes it's hard for teachers to do that because it's like they don't want to seem like they're bragging or they're boasting themselves. Because I have one teacher, the girl is bad. She is amazing. And every time she gets a compliment, it's like, oh no, no.
Yeah.
So I see that being hard for her. But when you set it up the way that you've explained it, like, a portfolio or hey, when you get something great, put it in, here's your folder, slide it in there, maybe just to remove it, because you will have those personalities where they almost shun the
Mhm.
opportunity to get the praise, right, that they deserve. So I
Mhm.
just think that's a good way to kind of combat
Yeah.
those personalities. Whereas I have some, they want to tell me every minute, oh, did Miss Johnson stop by the front desk?
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Did she tell you how I helped Johnny stop crying this morning? So this is really good. This conversation you're
Yeah.
helping me,
And
even
here's the
as
thing too.
Mhm.
That type of approach actually worked for me during my corporate days because I was with one employer, and I will say it was tough for me to receive positive, feedback from others. I'd be like, okay, I don't really need to be in the spotlight, or I don't need. It's okay. All right, thank you for letting me know. But being able to reflect on different emails or just keeping that portfolio, that is actually what helped my manager to be able to kind of help me to
Yeah.
receive it, versus just saying I didn't need the recognition or need, to hear about it. Cause I never wanted to be that person that felt like, oh, I'm boasting or anything like that. So I get it, but
Absolutely.
I'm actually a recipient of that kind of approach really does work.
That
You
is
know,
good.
I'm a certified DISC facilitator, the DISC personality profile, and there is a personality type that really shuns away from public recognition or recognition in general. And so it's really important also to know your employees
Yes.
because you might have to be intentional in getting that information because they're not going to share it.
That is so true. Knowing every single one of their personalities, right? And
Mhm.
their level of comfort, because you will have just that range. So that's really good. Really good.
So, Dr. Young, I'm going to segue into talking about data analytics. And I want to know, like, what role does data analytics play in your performance review process? Or, how have you used data to mitigate biases?
That one, as I thought about it, as I pondered it, I was like, okay, what data do we really use? And one of the things, and of course, because of just the entity that we work within, we're a preschool, we're serving 6 weeks to 5 years old. At the end of the day, our metrics really center around the teacher child interactions. It centers around customer service with the teacher, because at the end of the day, it's parents that's paying us. And we have to make sure that those parents are satisfied with our services. So when we looked at metrics, it was more about, are the teachers, creating an environment that fosters safety, that fosters love, and that fosters, learning. And so, unlike in the public schools where they have assessments, where they would have data that they could use, we didn't have that. Because our little ones, there are no major assessments that you were required to do other than the 4-year-olds. The 4-year-olds is where you had actual numerical data that you could pull to see, because those students, that program is monitored and governed by Department of Education. So our 4-year-olds in our VPK program, the voluntary pre-kindergarten, it's a program to get the little ones ready for kindergarten. They would have to take 3 assessments in within a school year. So a pre, a mid-year, and a post. So we had actual data that we could look at to determine a teacher's impact on learning. But now what do I do with my infants? and my 1-year-old and my 2-year-olds. So one thing that we had to do, and there are some assessments out there. Pardon me, one moment, ladies. I'm getting a little parched here.
No worries.
My apologies. So there are some assessments that exist in our space, but I know I didn't want to be too formal using those because they just come with a whole lot of stuff. So we created our own. We created our own little checklist and point systems of what we were looking for. Now, our 3-year-olds, because they were going to be going into the VPK program, we just kind of looked at, do they know some of the basics, right? But we then tied that to the teacher, because the teacher is responsible for doing this. So we would do a pre and a post. But what I did not do was tie it to their performance evaluation. It was just more to inform us about our teaching and if our curriculum, if we felt it was solid enough, and what could we do in the classroom to help those children who were not meeting those metrics. So for example, if we found 5 children didn't understand the sounds of all 26 letters, then we were going to create groups. We were going to differentiate instruction with them. So we use that data to help drive our decisions in the classroom. But I didn't use it towards their performance appraisal because at the end of the day, it wasn't a requirement for them as it was for VPK. Does that make sense? Now, my VPK teachers, these babies, they have to be ready because if not, I can lose the ability to offer that program.
Yeah.
Because now the state looks, they give us a grade, just like they do in public schools. My children, I graduate 80 VPK students every year. So those 80 students, if they go to a private school, they will take what's called a kindergarten readiness assessment. If they pass or don't pass, that score gets kicked back to me. I need 70% of my students to pass, and I'm not settling for 70, you know, overachievers, right? So with those teachers, it's a part of their performance evaluation.
That makes
and
sense.
they know that going in, but now they qualify for a bonus that the other staff won't, right? Because that's I don't want to say a challenge, but that's a level of expectation that's not on the others. Now, another person may say, well, wait a minute, the 2s and the 3s teachers, they could be doing some things to get them ready. This is true, but the state is tying their performance directly to those children. So I'm going to put it, you know, that responsibility on them. So that's a long way of saying I use data with certain age groups, certain teachers, right? And tie it to their performance. They get bonus structure as a result. Because when COVID happened, we were getting funds for that. And I used it directly for those teachers because they had more pressures on them. You know, the state literally comes in and do observations of their classroom. And they get a score. You know, that's not happening in the baby's room. That's not happening in the 1s and 2s. So it's more pressure on them. So that's where we use data. But in terms of data as a whole for all 30 of my employees, it's really just their score on their performance evaluation, but really trying to, before we get to this final performance evaluation, have we used enough data points along the way where we talked about those formal observations, those classroom walkthroughs, those opportunities for improvement? Have we use that data, more of that qualitative data, right? To help one be ready when they get to that final performance evaluation. Does that answer what you're looking for?
Yes. And so I would imagine the kindergarten readiness assessment, you're able to use that data to identify professors or teachers who there might be a pattern where maybe their students are not meeting that criteria, and then you can work and build from that.
They get shipped out. No, I'm just kidding.
It's an incentive for them.
You are correct. It did inform me that I had to move one of my teachers because I have 4 VPK classrooms and one teacher taught 2 of those classes. That's 50%.
Yeah.
Great. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Nadia.
So, do you use like any artificial intelligence driven tools during that process? Or if so, do you have anything in place?
We have not at this time.
Mhm.
And I'm certain it's only a matter of time
Yeah.
before we will. But at this point, we have not used, AI in any way to help us. We've just kind of relied really on what the state has provided us, utilizing their tools. And so right now, AI hasn't come into play, but I know it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more and more organizations are adapting it in their businesses, and it's you can't get away from it. AI is everywhere, and it's going to continue to evolve.
You know what? One thing I guess I can say where I have used AI, I mean, it's a part of my onboarding process. It's not a part of my performance appraisal, but it is a part of, I am literally using AI to help us write a course now for my new hires
Nice.
because we are still doing it the old fashioned way where they come in, my director loses 2 days where she can do nothing but spend time with training the teachers because literally you sit and we train you. And now every teacher has said, oh my gosh, we love it this way, right? Because we're not sitting them in front of a computer, but it's taxing. It's taking human capital off the floor and getting her stuck inside of, an office for 2 days as she's doing training. So what I'm now doing is using AI. I use Talent LMS I'm developing a course for all of my new hires. And I literally go in there and tell AI, hey, give me a course or a section, a topic where we're focusing on how to change diapers. I want video. I want gloves included. I want this information. And it spit out this
Wow.
whole beautiful, section. And all I had to do was go in and tweak it and it put in a video. Then it brought in the CDC guidelines, which we already use. So it is a part of the human resource, process for my onboarding, but I've not used it yet for the performance. It was so funny because I brought my husband in. And I was like, babe, watch this. And I, would tell it to do whatever. It's amazing what it is able to accomplish. So when I'm done, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, this onboarding, not onboarding, I've learned the difference in onboarding and orientation. Orientation training for my new hires my director's going to love it because it frees her up now, but hopefully it won't lose that human piece that's the feedback.
Correct. That's the thing with AI.
Yes. Yeah. So I know that's not directly on top of it, but I just wanted to share how we are kind of tapping into AI.
No, that's perfect. I mean, I think it fits perfectly right in because it even gives, just space for us to hear how other businesses are utilizing it and how it's working for them.
Yes, it definitely is a beautiful thing.
For
Helps
sure.
to save time.
I know it does.
Yes.
So thinking a little bit back to just addressing bias itself when it comes to performance management, I'm curious if you can maybe describe a time for us, Dr. Young, when addressing bias in performance management may have led to perhaps a significant positive change in your business.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to that earlier conversation where I was talking about that teacher who called me out and was like, well, what about this and what about that? That was definitely an opportunity and an aha moment. Like, and even with you guys, like I said, I don't really know the jargon, but I thank you for letting me know, the recency biasing and horn and halo, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Right.
And so we're just, and a lot of entrepreneurs, I know education, and I'm like, nobody can take that from me. That's my God-given gift. I call it what my grandmother used to say. I can stand flat-footed, as she would say, and teach. I can teach anybody anything.
Listen, I get it.
And that's what I know. But now you throw me into business and you have all of these other elements. And it's like, wow, it's so many other moving parts. And we don't have a human resource department, we don't have an IT department. We don't have those things it's all me having to figure it out or get into organizations that will help us. So, you know, through this process, through the 8 years, I'm learning where we need to grow, how we need to improve. So like I said, when that teacher pointed that out, it was very telling, like, whoa, you know, and that she was honest enough to say it, right? And that I've created that space. I always look, I don't have a problem bragging on me. You know, I always say, my teachers know they can come to us at any given time because I wanted that. I treat my teachers as customers as well, because without them, I don't have a business. So my parents aren't the only, I have what I call external customers, the parents, and internal customers. Those are my and I have to serve them just as much as I serve my parents. So I've worked so hard to create that environment. So for her to be say, you know, wow, like you scored me low here, but what about this? And I'm like, whoa. So as a result, I think if I could say anything too, be open, you know, as a small business owner, as an employer, be open. It's not just you in this, it's a partnership. And when you can hear and then react in a positive manner, it just makes for a better organization. So really seeing them as partners and really wanting them to grow, it led to these formal observations. Now I had to then make that, right? Like, what is that going to be? Now my director, she can go in the file cabinet, grab that formal observation, put it on a clipboard and say, I'm going to do a couple of formal observations. Teachers get that in advance. They know what's on that sheet. There's no surprise. Like, you know what we're looking for, right? Even when we do the 5-minute walkthroughs, they know what's on the document. So there are no surprises. So I think that's the biggest thing, or for me, it was understanding how and where we needed to improve. The other thing is that I did, and I think maybe this is the halo that you were talking about. I had this one, or I have, she's been with me for a long time, and I won't say much because if anybody's listening, they claim she's my favorite, you know, if any of my people are listening, she's just, and I talked about her already, I'm like, she's just good. She's good at what she does. She doesn't want to do anything else in life. This is her calling. This is her passion. She's so good. And I found myself in the beginning holding everyone to that standard. But I had to define what made her so good, right? What are those things? So if I could peel back the layers, she's on time. You know, those are some of the small things. She's on time. She shows up. She doesn't call out. She's always prepared. Lessons are written. She's loving to the children. She knows how to redirect them. Classroom management. That was me now starting to define it. Whereas I used to just, man, that girl is good. You know, and so they didn't know that I was holding them to that standard, but I knew it. Right? They're not such and such. You know, and I could even sometimes, if we're being honest, just even my interactions with her, like if she made a mistake, because nobody's perfect, you know, even my approach for her would be different. And I'm just
be different from other employees.
Whereas anybody else, you know, like that's not right. Everybody should get the same grace, right? Regardless. So that was something I did realize, and no one had to point it out to me. I'm a reflector, and I've always been that way because I'm always asking myself, did I handle that correctly? So, and sometimes to a fault where my husband would be like, girl, let it go, you know, but because I like to reflect, it does give space to see where I'm going wrong. And so that is one. Now she's still with me, and she's still a bad chick.
She's still good.
She's still good. She's still good.
I love that itself, that you know, actually defined what made her good, because sometimes, you know, a lot of employers, they just say things like that. Oh, she's a great employee, or he's so good at what he does. Okay, but what makes them good at it? You know, what are you actually measuring their performance up against? Are there ways that they can improve? And I always tell, you know, employers too, you've got to be transparent. So I love the transparency that you have with your staff members, especially when it comes to the evaluations, because no evaluation should ever be a surprise to an employee. And that's what I always say. You should always have some type of idea what you're walking into, and not like, oh, so I actually really did have a bad year when I thought I was doing good. You've got to know what you're being measured against. And one of my favorite sayings, or a quote rather, that I got from a professor of mine back in graduate school, and I have lived on this ever since. She said, you cannot manage what you can't measure. And when I need to stop right there, right now.
You're right. You can't.
Right.
No, you have to have metrics. You
That's it.
have to have metrics, and that's where that data is so important. And she is one of those that's teaching, that state funded program.
Not taking any risk there.
Not taking any. I'm like, and by the way, I need you over there teaching those 2 classes, because that's 50%.
There you go.
But using that data, right? So I guess, the more we talk about it, Dr. Nadia, I guess I do use data more than I realize.
Yeah.
You see?
So true.
Yes,
That's
but you're
really
right.
good.
You have to be able to know what you're looking for, right? That's the only way that's the only way you can have some level of objectivity. Like, subjectivity is always going to find its way in there, but at least it gives you some ability to be able to say, hey, we're going according to putting my feelings aside.
Of course, of course. And you know what, just another quick question, like, with you sharing how you address that type of bias, how do you feel it overall affected like your business performance?
Okay, here I go again, bragging.
Brag on.
We are a good school. Not because, we worked at it.
I actually got to cut in and say you really are, Mia, because I have known of your school personally for several years, and I have even looked at your school compared to others, and I'm like, she's got something.
Thank you.
Your reputation of your school speaks for itself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we were intentional. I went in with that mindset. I didn't want to just be another preschool. It literally is 14 preschools on my street. 14 large preschools. Wow. We're talking about they're holding 210 children at one time in the building. Mine, we hold 179 at one time, but I'm able to serve, with morning, whatnot. But parents have options and choices. So we were very intentional, and I knew where it mattered most was with the teachers. They're the ones who have the most time spent with the children. They're the ones who are responsible for pretty much everything that happens in that classroom. So where do I need to put my focus? On the teachers. So going in knowing that, and knowing, that in order to create this space where parents love their children being there, that children love being there.
Yes.
What pieces and components needed to be in place? Happy teachers who felt supported, teachers who actually had the materials and the content that they needed in there. Like, I have teachers that will come to me from other schools, and they're like, you give this to us? Yes, because I need you to do your job. I need you to have what you need to be successful. Because when you sit down with this evaluation, one thing you will never be able to tell us is that you didn't have the tools and the resources. That's the one thing you'll never be able to walk away and say about Bright Scholars. I buy so much stuff it's ridiculous. What my teachers have, literally, if they say they need it and they can justify it, they're going to get it, because I want you to be able to create an experience every single day in your class with those children. So it just all ties back to ongoing coaching, ongoing support, doing those walkthroughs, just really spending time with them, because it's easy to get up front and totally forget about what I call the back of the house, the classrooms. Because you get inundated with doing tours and all the DCF compliance and the VPK compliance, all the paperwork, all of the things. You can easily forget about the teachers. We never forget about our teachers. And so we keep that as the forefront. Like I said, they're a customer. I see them as a customer. So what do? You serve customers. So we serve our staff so that they can serve the students. And we're not perfect, you know, we make mistakes, but we work to fix it. We don't live in our mistakes and say it is what it is. You're never going to hear that from bright scholars. If you do, that person will be gone. I can promise you that. There is no time for evaluation. No, because there are some standards that we just don't break. You know, and we work to create that culture and foster it, you know. And sometimes I have to take the stress off because we think we treat them like they're going to Harvard when they leave us. Baby, they're just going to kindergarten. So sometimes we have to scale back a little bit, like let these babies play and have some fun. Let the teachers have some fun, you know. But Dr. Young wants them ready for Harvard.
You know, gotta let them be kids, you know what I mean?
But
Like,
you know, that foundation's important though.
Yes,
yes, it is. It is. And we hear that in the community. The teachers next door at the elementary school say, we know the bright scholars children. They're like, they could tell by the fact that they can sit, because we believe in centers, but we also believe in children need to learn how to sit for a few minutes and receive instruction. You can't be up in centers all day playing. No, gotta have that balance. And so we get the feedback from the community, and the fact that I've had teachers that stay, that revolving door that we had in the first couple of years. I have teachers who've been with me since I opened.
Wow. And that is unheard of, honestly, within your industry.
It really is. I have 7 who've been with me since I opened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That just speaks volumes. It is.
Yeah. So it's working. It's working.
I can tell.
But it's always room for improvement.
Yeah. You know, having a successful performance management program in place will help, you know, with that retention, but then also attracting the teachers that you want to have in your school. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you know what, Dr. Nadia, because I know we're wrapping up, but this was something that happened a while ago. I hired someone that I knew just didn't fit, right? And it was because of personality. And so my husband, I came home and I was just wrestling with the decision, and this was a leadership position. And he was like, well, you know, everybody's not going to be you. And I'm like, I stumbled upon some research that says that can be one of your qualifiers, where you need a certain personality to be able to drive the type of culture that you've created. And when I read that article and saw it was backed by research, I said, okay, I have something to support me. And so I may need to start exploring, you know, tools like the DISC assessment, because, and I know, like I said, not everybody's going to be like me, but there are certain things that I needed. Like my parents expect when that door opens, when they walk through, they will be greeted by name. And if my leaders can't do that, if you're too shy, if you can do, my parents, if they say they're going to Colorado, when they get back, we're going to stand in the lobby and talk about your trip. They wait for us to do that. Wow. We have to ask that. And if you don't have that personality where you want to shy away, and sure enough, we ended up not being able to keep that person. And that informed me, okay, it's okay for that to be a component. Like, I know it can't be in totality, but when I'm looking for leadership, you know, so like I said, I may not know the right jargon, but it really spoke volumes to me. Like, that is a piece of it. Certain jobs require certain, you know, personalities as well. So that was just another interesting layer that just came up.
Very.
So, you know, what advice would you give to other business owners looking to create a fair and unbiased performance management system? And if you could share like any specific resources and tools or practices that could be helpful.
The biggest thing I would say, it really needs to be something that needs to be thought of in the beginning. I talked about you want to get the business up and going. If you're going to have an organization where you employ people, you have to make that one of the priorities, where you're putting an employee performance system in place. It doesn't have to be completely fleshed out. It doesn't have to be, you know, all buttoned up, but you have to find something, because I think it could have saved me a lot of heartache and headache those first couple of years. So that would be my first thing, that it has to be equally important to all of the other things that you think are important. Find that tool. And then to look at what's available in your specific industry. You know, I'm in childcare, so there's a plethora of items out there. So I spent a lot of time doing research, communicating with the Early Learning Coalition, you know, looking at different, what do they call it, walkthrough observations that were available, and pulling those together to tweak. So that takeaway would be, look at what's available in your specific industry, because somebody has done it. It's nothing new. Somebody has done it. You can take it and tweak it. And then to know you are human, and every human we will have an opinion. You have to know that you bring opinions to the table, and you have to be willing to check those opinions if those opinions are going to negatively cause you to respond to an employee a certain way. You have to be able to filter that, and you have to be honest about it so that you can be fair with your employees. So those would be my 3 main points.
And those are all excellent. I'm just sitting here listening. I'm like, okay, can she just tell me more? I mean, I just want to keep sitting here taking notes.
Well, I'm glad, because I definitely wanted to add value. You know, I don't know it all, but I can definitely talk about my experiences and what my challenges have been. And so you just lean into your community, whatever that industry is. And I've done that a lot, you know, like finding other childcare owners. What are you using? You know, have you found what works, and that type of thing. So it's been great.
It definitely sounds like it, you know, Dr. Young. And I got to tell you, you have set the bar high. And I just applaud you for all of your success, you know, and just appreciate you coming and even sharing your knowledge and experiences and even examples with us today. This has been just an incredible conversation. I'm like, I hate for it, honestly, to end. I really do.
Well, I've had fun as well. I really enjoyed it. And the fact that I can take away, you know, things as well, because I am definitely going to work on these employee portfolios. So thank you guys for bringing that, you know, to the forefront. So it's been a great conversation for sure.
It has.
Good. All right, so we are getting ready to wrap it up for today, guys. We certainly know, you know, for a fact that this has been just a great conversation that we've been having. You know, we always hate for our conversations to end because it's just too good. And it's like, man, you just leave me wanting more. But I hope and just pray all of you guys, you know, definitely had a lot of takeaways from just our discussion today. You know, as I mentioned before, you know, Dr. Mia Young, she is just a wealth of knowledge. I have benefited greatly in different ways over the years from her, and I'm quite sure that you guys have all benefited from her today as well. With a lot of the questions that you heard, you know, these were questions that Dr. Nadia and I actually incorporated from our recent Lunch and Learn, you know, presentation that I did for GoSherm. So I want to thank everyone as well for just submitting your questions to us. You know, it was great being able to utilize those questions to incorporate it in this type of episode. And look what type of conversation we had as a result of it. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Dr. Nadia, anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, you know, just continue to listen and watch our episodes. Just as this conversation has been fruitful, all of the topics that we cover is helpful for either you as an HR professional or even the leaders that might be listening to this podcast. So just continue to support. And of course, if you ever have any questions or recommendations, you can submit those to our GoSherm DEI committee email, which is diversity@gosherm.org. And we'll be happy to see what our audience thinks and any feedback that they can give us as well.
Thanks again, guys, for joining us today. If you haven't heard any of the other episodes that we've posted out previously, definitely check those out. I know that they're on Podbean, and then you can also just click on the links directly from the Go SHRM page itself. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes. We've got some more incredible topics coming up, and I'll just give you a little hint as to the next one. That is going to be on microaggressions. So that's a huge, huge topic. And we're actually going to break that up into a part 1 and part 2 episode because it's just so much we want to be able to cover. So stay tuned for that. And thank you again for joining us.